Hello, dear friends. I am Natalia Kolodenko, a psychologist, motivational speaker, business consultant, and entrepreneur. We will thoroughly and actively explore the topic of money. Today, we will delve into the categories of poverty, affluence, and wealth. Why is this necessary and why is it important? Because when you understand where you are, you understand the efforts needed to move from one stage to another. Before we dive into this topic, I want to emphasize that I have studied a large number of sources and various research studies conducted by organizations. I can draw the following conclusion: the concepts of poverty, affluence, and wealth have been explored by various institutions, scientific laboratories, and international organizations to this day. This topic is of great concern and raises many questions. Speaking on a global scale, the first thing we should pay attention to is that at your standard of living, you may be wealthy in some countries and poor in others. The concepts of poverty, affluence, and wealth always depend on the country you live in. For example, for a poor African country, a person living in a one-room apartment in a Soviet-style building might be considered affluent. But compared to the average family in a European country with good financial indicators, the resident of the Soviet-style apartment might be considered poor, in need of subsidies and assistance. Let's define what we will consider poverty, affluence, and wealth. Let's also add the concept of destitution because it is also important. Firstly, I want to say that, based on the percentage of expenses, we have regular expenses: food, utilities, rent if housing is not owned, transportation costs, and basic hygiene items. These regular expenses are necessary for survival and meeting basic needs. If your family's total income goes towards regular expenses every month, with over 70% going to housing, food, and debt repayment, this falls into the category of poverty. Why is that? Because if more than 70% of income goes towards regular expenses, there is no opportunity to save and develop. In the event of illness or changes in income, you will find yourself at zero or even in the negative, and you will have to borrow to survive. This percentage is relative. For some, it may be 67%, for others 74%, for some, it's all 100%, when people live from paycheck to paycheck. The financial situation of such individuals should be classified as poverty. I want to clarify right away that in this course, I do not intend to offend anyone's feelings. Of course, no one wants to call themselves poor, but I want to warn I may use the terms destitute or beggars. It's not about the amount of money in your wallet, but about mindset. That is, it is solely a mindset category. To develop, sometimes sharp thoughts and phrases are necessary, which once helped me a lot. So I will share this with you. So, if 70% of income or more goes towards regular expenses, this is poverty. Affluence is when up to 30% of income goes towards regular expenses, maximum 40%. An affluent person allocates about 60% of their income to leisure, non-standard expenses, investments, or education. Affluent people don't worry about not having enough money next month. Wealth is when about 15 to 20% of income goes towards regular expenses. Please note that wealthy individuals live in high-expense homes. For example, a villa by the sea requires significant expenditure on staff and utility bills. Therefore, I speak in terms of percentages rather than specific amounts. Whether you earn more or less than $1,000, it's important to look at the percentage ratio. Personally, I rent a fairly expensive apartment with high utility bills. In absolute numbers, I may seem wealthy, but if more than 20% of my income goes towards this, then I am not wealthy but affluent. It's important to understand that the focus should be on the percentage ratio. For example, if someone owns a yacht, a villa in Spain, and a house, and the maintenance of these assets consumes over 50% of their income, they are no longer wealthy but affluent. Although if they were to sell all of these, they could turn them into cash. But the more expensive the car or house, the higher the monthly expenses. The decision to sell a second home or yacht should be made when maintaining these assets consumes too high a percentage of income. Income can fluctuate even for very wealthy individuals, while expenses only tend to increase. Examples of people who can barely maintain a country house but still don't sell it are not uncommon. It's wise to sell a country house if its maintenance is burdensome, and to acquire something less costly. This will help avoid debt and maintain financial stability. These are extremely important nuances that cannot be ignored, otherwise, one might end up in the negative, which is undesirable. So, what is destitution? Destitution is when 100% of income is spent on living expenses, and even that is not enough. Destitution is when there's not enough for food, clothing, or utility bills, and one has to borrow money. A large percentage of the population in different countries is in a state of destitution because pensions and social benefits may barely cover necessary expenses or be insufficient for minimal survival. Next, there is the concept of long-term consumption. These are expenses for a year. For example, you've covered your regular expenses, such as food, clothing, utilities, phone, internet, transportation, and hygiene products. These are the most essential things without which it's difficult to get by. For instance, a washing machine may seem like a luxury, but nowadays, it's indispensable. Or heating in the house, theoretically, one could do without it by wearing more clothes, but it's not a standard of living. Long-term consumption includes things for which you don't pay regularly. For example, a gym membership for a year or a loan. That is, you've already spent the money but must repay it in the future. These are purchases that will require expenses later, for example, if you'll need to replace an oven or washing machine soon, or repair a car. According to the schedule, you may not be able to pay expenses 3 years ahead, but at some point, they will have to be paid. That's why it's desirable to keep regular expenses within 30 to 40% of income. Long-term expenses that will arise in the future should be paid from the remaining funds. If all your funds go towards daily needs, then how will you pay for example, dental treatment? It's a necessity but not a monthly one. Birthdays, weddings, medical treatment, these are the things for which it's good to have money saved up rather than taking out a loan. The goal of discussing the topics of poverty, affluence, and wealth is to understand these concepts, recognize where you stand, and understand what to do next. One of the most discussed topics regarding finances is loans. Personally, I have never taken out loans. The only instance was when my first husband took out a loan for furniture for the nursery. It was a small amount, and he decided that it was better to pay $30 per month than the entire amount at once. But over the year, the exchange rate changed and the payments became unaffordable. As a result, the furniture was damaged, and the joy of the purchase was gone. Since then, I understood that a loan is an unpredictable thing. When I was buying my first expensive car, I was offered installment payments with minimal interest. But I remembered the feeling of debt and decided that either I pay the entire amount at once, or I don't buy the car. I'm not saying that loans or installment plans should never be used. There are different situations, but in post-Soviet countries, interest rates are often unreasonable, and the risks are high. As much as possible, avoid loans. They should be avoided. I'm surprised by people who take out loans for yogurt or blenders. These items are nice to have, but you can do without them. Getting into debt for such luxuries is unwise. In general, one should strive to get out of debt. Honestly, we all, in a sense, live on credit because we know that next month we have to pay for office rent, utilities, and other obligations. So, this is also a form of credit, but it doesn't scare me because if I can't handle it, I can stop paying at any time. I have alternative solutions to avoid falling into a financial trap. This is indeed an important topic. When the quarantine was suddenly announced and my office stopped working, I evaluated my financial situation as affluent, transitioning into wealth, and sometimes I find myself in a state of wealth for quite long periods, until I consistently earn with a surplus. I spend a maximum of 20% of income on regular payments, and I have a significant amount left in surplus, which I spend on emotional things, development, or apartment renovation. My principle: I only buy what I want, and only when I have the money for it. When I wanted a larger apartment, I decided not to buy a 2-room one that I could afford now. I will buy a good car, and when I have money for a good apartment, I will buy it. I want to live in a good apartment now, so I rent it. This is also an important topic because there is an opinion that only people in dire straits or those who don't care about money rent. But no matter how much I calculate, buying an office is unprofitable for me. The amount to buy an office would be huge, and the rent for the office that suits me now is almost negligible. I provide personal examples so that you understand a different mindset. I learned this from other people. When I saw that many of my acquaintances, wealthy people, rent houses, apartments, and offices, I wondered why. they can afford to buy all of this. It turned out that my friends wanted to buy a house, lived in it for 6 months, and realized that they were more comfortable in an apartment. Other friends bought an office, but when their business changed, they found that they didn't want to rent it out because of the investment in renovations. It would have been more convenient for them to rent. Analyzing these responses, I realized that the attitude towards profitability is quite relative. Many books on money and earnings teach saving and creating safety cushions. My approach is different. I view money as energy. Depending on whether you are in poverty, affluence, or wealth, the spending and investment strategy should be different. A person who spends 70% or more on regular expenses should adhere to one strategy, affluent individuals another, and wealthy individuals a third. However, any of them can lose their position, and no one is immune to it. To avoid ending up in a critical condition, you need to constantly develop. This is my position 100%. What do I mean by development? It includes reading, reflection, analysis, attending courses and seminars, as much as possible, on topics like thinking, success, achievements, and sales. It's essential that these courses and seminars are of high quality. Often people wonder, why do wealthy people need a psychologist or success courses? The answer is simple: because once they learned and listened, they became wealthy. To maintain or increase their wealth, they need new ideas and support. Being wealthy is not a constant. There are many examples of people who became multimillionaires in the 90s but now live in Soviet-era apartments and cannot adapt to new conditions. The encouraging thought is that if very wealthy people can become poor, then very poor people can become wealthy. To do this, you need to develop your thinking. What is thinking? Thinking is a mental process that involves using your knowledge and skills in society. For example, a person can be intelligent and talented but shy, and this quality overrides all of their merits, hindering them from realizing their talents. There are also people who do not possess special knowledge and skills but are charismatic and easily negotiate with others. Such people often receive offers and opportunities they would not have without their charisma. So success doesn't always depend on talent in a specific area. There are cases where a person becomes successful because of their social skills and ability to build relationships with others. Sometimes someone is just good at corporate events, so they occupy their position. Many people judge this, but it's important to understand that it's not about the position itself. It's important to remember that fairness doesn't exist. The point is that even if a person plays the role of a jester at court, they fulfill their function. If the boss likes this person, they will pay them because we all pay for what we like. But if you always have a gloomy face, you are always dissatisfied, poorly dressed, don't learn anything, and go through life offended, no talents will help you become affluent. Money, both their lack and abundance, is a great teacher. When you are poor, money teaches you to change to earn. When you are wealthy, money teaches you to change to avoid becoming a narcissist and to continue developing. A comfortable life should not be a reason to forget about your spiritual tasks and relationships. When you are wealthy, everyone sees you as a resource, and everyone wants to get a piece from you. You have to live and interact with this too. Wealthy people often have problems with their children. Why? Because children who initially live in abundance cannot be grateful for what is normal for them. We can only be grateful for things that were previously unavailable to us and have now appeared. For example, if you always had warmth in your home, you cannot be thankful for it because it was never cold for a single day. We appreciate only what was previously out of reach and has now emerged. Any shift towards wealth must come through gratitude. If gratitude does not arise, it needs to be developed within oneself. The first thing you need to do is sit down and write down the maximum number of points for which you are grateful in material terms. What was good for you in childhood? For example, it was always warm. There was always bread, you didn't know what hunger was. Even if you had a fear of lack of money, what did it teach you, and why are you grateful for it? Task number 1 is to write 180 points of gratitude. This exercise will help you realize the material blessings in your life and attract similar ones. Be grateful for everything you have and notice the material blessings around you. This is the first step to strengthening your financial position. And as sad as it may sound, if you lack money, it means you are not a money magnet. Or if you want more but don't know how, it means you are not an idea magnet. You need to understand how you are hindering yourself from achieving this. There is a concept called the psychology of poverty. And I want to say that I have been working on this topic since I decided to become a wealthy person. I wanted to become wealthy so much that I eventually became a rich person. So far, I have managed to maintain this position. But it's important to understand what wealth is. Wealth is when you have as much as you are comfortable with in proportion to the effort expended for the result. The idea of $1 million for everyone is utopian. The turnover of a company in $1 million, winning $1 million in the lottery, and having $1 million in your account are 3 different millions. People often don't understand what they want. Do they want to receive $1 million once and spend it? Or do they want $1 million in profit per month, per year, in 10 years? This figure is as abstract as the word eternity. The brain often cannot imagine another level of income. Income and expenses are like inhaling and exhaling. You don't need to want a beautiful number, you need to understand what you need and what is desirable for your mood and development. Make a list of what you need per month and not a penny more. I know how to earn more, and I can earn more. But then I will have to spend more time. Not only work physically more but also maintain it all. In the movie with Tom Cruise, his character transported drugs and was paid in cash with bags. He didn't know where to put all this money. This illustrates a real problem. Legally or illegally, it's difficult to keep a large sum. Money can be frozen in an account, the bank can go bankrupt, money can be stolen from cards. Keeping it at home is dangerous, you could be robbed. The larger the sum, the more upset you will be at the loss. So it is important to consider that money is energy. And depending on which stage you are at, poverty, affluence, wealth, the strategy should be different. People spending 70% or more on regular expenses should have one strategy. Affluent individuals another, wealthy individuals a third. But any of them can lower the bar, can lose. To avoid ending up in a critical condition, you need to engage in development. This includes reading, analysis, attending courses and seminars on thinking, success, and sales. Thinking is the key to wealth. Therefore, it is important to understand that you need an amount where you feel comfortable and financially free without worrying about how to keep it, where to invest it, or how to service it. Any account with a large sum of money requires expenses for maintenance. For example, if you put $1 million in a Swiss bank, they will charge you interest for servicing it, and it's a lot of money. Money should not just lie around. My position wealth is when you feel good and have a small reserve. It's not about surrounding yourself with money up to the ceiling and bathing in it. The amount of money should correspond to the scale of personality. If a person is modest and shy and wants $1 million, it contradicts their essence. $1 million should be had by someone who is either intellectually incredible, like Steve Jobs, or very bright and noticeable, a charismatic artist, scientist, etc. Being wealthy means being noticeable, being judged, being constantly looked at, and wanting to take something from you. The psychology of poverty includes the desire to appear richer than you actually are, for example, by buying fakes. Buying fakes is an acknowledgement that you will never reach the original. For me, living within means is living honestly. If I haven't earned enough for an expensive car, I don't buy it on credit, I drive the one I can afford. If I borrow money, I do it in a way that allows me to repay the debt quickly. The psychology of poverty is about taking freebies, wearing fakes, watching unlicensed movies. I respect the work of other people and pay for it. Of course, there are cases when you can't find where to pay for a movie, but this is an exception. Often people justify themselves by taking sugar in cafes or shampoos from hotels. If this becomes a regular practice, you reinforce to your subconscious that you are poor and will never be able to buy it. It's essential to understand this. When you take something for free, it becomes something extremely valuable and inaccessible in your value system. Maybe someone will object, I know a millionaire who saves on everything, down to reusing a tea bag, or buys fakes. Yes, such cases happen, but I'm sharing my experience. My psychology of poverty began to change when I stopped taking everything I could potentially buy. I acknowledged that I couldn't afford it yet, and I didn't take it. When I can afford it, then I'll take it. I didn't harbor resentment towards money. I approached it with interest, seeking solutions to earn. This is an important recommendation. Stop associating money with pain and scarcity, and start seeing them as points in a game. The word earn often associates with hard labor, as if someone is pulling iron shackles in the field. It has a heavy message. So my main message: money is a teacher, you need to learn from it. If you don't have enough, you need to learn diligently and systematically. Make 5 more attempts to become more successful. Don't spit, don't take offense, don't blame the rich. Next, learn to admire wealthy people. Here's a task: find 5 to 7 people you know personally, or see, or who are known in the world. Write down what you admire about their lives, behavior, strategy. There's a concept of identity in psychology. What is it? If I consider myself not musically talented, my whole mental organization will resist the manifestation of hearing and voice, even if there is a great teacher nearby. Until I acknowledge myself as a singer or a person with musical potential, I won't succeed. I once paid a lot of money for this phrase because I couldn't dance, and I needed to perform on the project Dancing with the Stars. The psychotherapist asked, "Have you acknowledged yourself as a dancer?" I said no. He said, "Well, that's it. Nothing will work until you acknowledge it first: identity, then behavior. Acknowledge yourself as a worthy woman, entrepreneur, or wealthy person, and then you will become one." Mental reality pulls material reality behind it. The reverse happens less often. Next task: take examples of 5 to 7 wealthy people and analyze their path to learn from them. And what do you admire? They, for example, have wealthy people who dress very tastelessly. There are wealthy people who are style icons. That is, money is not always a guarantee that you look good. Do something healthy. So the next step is mentally spending $100,000 a month. That is, you take the amount of $100,000, draw it at the top of the sheet, and mentally spend it. That is, you think like this: I want a Chanel bag. That's it. I bought myself a Chanel bag. Write down Chanel bag, then Google it. This is a Chanel bag. I like it. Choose it. This one costs $3,400 and this one is $5,200. But I like the one that's $200 again. Okay, I'll take it for $5,200. Take a photo, write it down, or draw it for yourself. It would be ideal to make a promo collage showing how you spent $100,000. Then, I want to go on vacation to some good hotel. Sit down, choose a country, choose a hotel, spend it. I want to go to an interesting restaurant twice a month, or go to a restaurant every day. So where will I go to have lunch every day? You know, restaurants are often perceived as a luxury item. Well, really, I have lunch in a restaurant every day. Sometimes I have lunch and dinner every day in a restaurant. And it's not luxury, it's more like a norm. And for many of my acquaintances, it's normal. That is, going to a restaurant is not considered such a super action. It's like brushing your teeth. But until you're afraid to spend, you're afraid to spend, you're afraid of income too. And you need to understand that between poverty, self-sufficiency, and wealth, the most important difference is the attitude towards spending. Not towards income, but towards spending. Poor people are most afraid of spending. This doesn't mean that from tomorrow you should start spending everything. Go, spend lavishly. It means to stop condemning those who spend $5,000 on a handbag. So when you admire affluent and wealthy people, you mentally join them. When you judge them, you just put up a dividing fence, like reinforced concrete, with an electric shocker, between yourself and money. So you want more money? Respect money. Don't be afraid of high prices. Don't judge those who spend a lot. Because one of the reasons why wealthy people are often called stingy, sometimes it's justified, but often not. Because, well, how does it happen? From my observations, there is a person who doesn't earn enough, he lacks something, some amenities, well, I don't know, the 15th pair of shoes, would like it, or the 5th, or the 2nd. And he meets a wealthy person. This person somehow enters the house. Well, it happened, lucky to become a godparent. What is the unconscious desire of someone who lacks money? The unconscious desire is for the rich person. Well, he's rich. Well, let him buy me these shoes. Is he sorry or what? And if he buys shoes, then let him also buy lipstick, or a bag. That is, let him solve my financial desires. But if the rich person walks around and buys everything for everyone, well, he'll stop being rich. So, to turn a billionaire into a millionaire can be done in 2 months. How to spend it after all? The task isn't that difficult. This is the first reason why they're considered stingy. Because they haven't guessed, haven't brought, haven't given. So, we have certain expectations that they should give us something because they're wealthy. And secondly, why are the rich often perceived as stingy? I'll tell you an insight now. If I, a wealthy person, go to a restaurant with a friend whose financial situation I don't know, for example, it's a bit tight, but I don't specifically ask my friend about her monthly income, I might not pay for her just because I don't even realize that there might not be money for it. Why? Because I live in different realities. Some things are forgotten. So, there are some things a wealthy person won't give you because they don't even realize you might not have them. I had a fantastic case once. I had a friend, the wife of a billionaire, and I was trying once again to help someone. I brought my fellow student from the university in Kiev. Everything will work out for you, I'll help you, support you. Let's talk about the path to success now, and I started with the fact that she had terrible clothes, and it was improper even to wear them to interviews. I thought, she's my wealthy friend. She has the same body shape, parameters, foot size. So I called her and said, help me out, girls. Maybe there are some shoes you don't need anymore, because you don't need shoes. Sometimes they're worn twice, they're not needed anymore. Help the girl out. So she came, she didn't have any clothes. But I didn't directly say, give shoes or give a skirt. I started the topic that way. I thought if she responds, she'll offer it herself. If there's no response, I just tell the story. And then my friend, the billionaire's wife, says, oh, you're such a darling for helping the girl. You tell her the most important thing, she must buy beige shoes first. Not black, beige always looks so expensive. So, she needs to buy beige shoes first and some neutral, preferably beige, not black suit. That's the start. It always looks expensive, and she lectured me on style like that, and that was the end of our conversation. I hung up and thought, why didn't she offer any of her own stuff? Because she doesn't even understand that there's no money, not only for beige shoes, but no shoes at all. I didn't want to buy right away because it humiliates the person too, like she's a charity case. I went and took her hand. Well, I bought something and some things were given. That's what I wanted to do. And in this situation I realized that this girl, the billionaire's wife, wasn't stingy, she had already forgotten that there might be no money for any shoes. But she just has a different reality. She talks to people who have the same things nearby. Everyone has 800 pairs of shoes. And if I had asked directly, maybe she would have given them away, and no problem. But she felt that her knowledge, her opinion, her position would be valuable in this situation. And she gave us a lesson. We accepted it with gratitude. And if we're talking about the fact that the wealthy are always stingy, then we need to talk about the fact that the not-so-wealthy often have exaggerated expectations, as if someone owes them something. I liked the phrase of one of my mentors that successful people are rarely listened to, and mostly people tell them how to live. So, like, well, since you have money, why don't you buy a country house? Since you have money, why don't you make a museum for the gifts people give you? You have money. But in my life, I haven't followed recommendations on how to spend my money. Oh, you can't imagine how many of them there were. A lot. And successful people either don't give such recommendations, or they only give them when you ask, and even then they might think twice about giving them. Exaggerating advice is one of the signs of poverty psychology. That is, exaggerating advice is compatible adequately and ecologically only when a person's job implies it. He's some kind of advisor or motivational speaker, or he gets paid for it. So, if they pay for advice, for example, a doctor's advice, we pay for it. The doctor doesn't go on the metro to find someone to treat. Let's ask. And my liver hurts. Oh, you'll have a drink, and my head hurts. Well, you go bang your head against the wall. The doctor doesn't go on the metro. Who should give advice? So what you're really competent in, you won't waste it. And you won't stuff it without soap either. And if you do, well, it means there's a lack of realization in life, and that's how a person tries to realize themselves. I'm sure many relatives tell you how to cure a sore throat, how to glue shoes. Everyone knows how to do it, especially how to spend or not to spend money. You had 3 tasks in this lesson. You need to do them all for yourself. Write down the questions that arise as a result of these tasks. That is, questions after the tasks and on the air. I'll gladly answer these questions. I want to emphasize once again the topic of expenditures. Why do we virtually spend $100,000 so that you start communicating and place yourself, identify yourself among the people who have the means for luxurious expenses? And I also want to say one interesting thing about poverty, affluence, and wealth. You know, I used to think that a person who earns $20,000 a month, for example, and a person who earns $200,000 a month, they live in roughly the same hotels, they drive the same cars, and with an income of $10,000, you can live the life of a millionaire. Why? Well, look, for example, there's my favorite business hotel in Switzerland, this one specifically. I've been to many business hotels, but this one is worthy of attention. In this hotel, I had some breakthrough. That's why it's important to still get into elite places, even if it's just to go in for coffee. Because your psyche remembers this state and you get the energy to achieve. If we only look through the window and judge, well, nothing will come of it. And I come to the business hotel, and I realize that I want to earn so much that I can easily come to this hotel. This motivation doesn't come from my head because I saw on Instagram how Masha traveled, and I'm no worse than Masha. This is a true goal, it came from within. I got there honestly. My client who invited me to consult in Switzerland paid for me. I stayed in this hotel while consulting, but my psyche remembered this state, and I was simply impressed. Well, I've talked a lot about it, that I had a feeling there that I was at the top of something. Everything in life has succeeded, everything, it's a point of success, such a strong impression, and it's a need to come there. It arose from within, not from a desire to show off my rich life to someone, but specifically from a desire to immerse myself in this state. How did my client know about this hotel? Because when he was renovating his house, he lived there temporarily for several months. So now, well, not even now, but a year after I lived in the hotel. Business, well, the approximate stay in the room, I don't know exactly, but approximately it costs 500 francs a day. But a person with a $5,000 income can afford to go live in his dream hotel for 3 days once every 6 months. And a millionaire can afford it. He can live there for 2 months. People rarely live in hotels, there's no need for that. They rent houses if it's that long. But that's not the point. The point is that you can have much less money and still enjoy what was created for the very affluent. Pay attention to these words. This is once again confirmation that wealth should be admired. Because the LVF Opera House, which is among the top 5 most beautiful in Europe, was built by the rich for the rich, but everyone who buys a ticket to the performance can use it. Elite restaurants were built by the rich for the rich, but anyone can buy a cup of coffee there. So we must be grateful to those people who have created something that becomes the object of our desire. That is, we want to get there, we want to use it. And only such thinking opens up opportunities to feel calm, to understand that when I work with very wealthy people, I'm ready to pay extra for it myself. Why does a sense of prosperity and tranquility emanate from them regarding money? And you involuntarily start projecting this onto yourself. I remember counseling a client for a long period of time. She was the wife of a billionaire. There was a period when poverty was prevalent in my life. I moved to Kiev, and 100% of my income went to living expenses. I remember how simply what she shared filled me with tranquility and prosperity. I absorbed this state like water. I was grateful for being able to see this tranquility, and the thought emerged in my mind, there's a lot of money in the world, and someday it will come to me. I didn't oppose myself to her, I just rejoiced for her. I thought, it's great that I have such a client. It'll be great to see this on TV. We must engage with the state of prosperity, with financial equilibrium. We must imagine ourselves as wealthy, freely spending money in our imagination, but then also doing it consciously in real life. For example, I engage in psychological exercises when I buy something that causes discomfort due to its cost. Why? Because if you don't stretch yourself financially in expenses, you won't stretch yourself in income either. I want to emphasize that simply spending won't make you richer. And simply saving won't make you richer either. Prosperity and wealth come when you consciously manage your finances. If you transition from poverty to prosperity by reducing expenses and increasing income, then at the point of prosperity, this strategy stops working. As one of my clients once said, the method that helped you earn 100,000 won't help you earn 1,000,000. These are different methods, different strategies. At each stage, we'll have our own tasks. Right now, you're participating in a social game where you can be at different levels, similar to playing Monopoly, where you need to advance through ranks without pain. You're looking for your method to reach the next level. With you was I, psychologist Natalia Kolodenko. Until we meet again.